Traveller is a series of related science fiction role-playing games, the first published in 1977 by Game Designers Workshop.Marc W.Miller designed Traveller with help from Frank Chadwick, John Harshman, and Loren K.Wiseman. Game overview. Characters typically journey between various star systems and engage in activities such as exploration, ground and space battles, and interstellar trading. Traveller characters are defined not by the need to increase native skill and ability but by achievements, discoveries, wealth, titles and political power. Key features derived from literary sources are incorporated into Traveller in all its forms. Human-centric but cosmopolitan, the core rules focus on human characters, but there is ample support for using and playing aliens. Traveller's travel. Interstellar travel is through the use of the FTL jump drive, which moves a ship through jump space a few light years at a time. Each jump always takes about 1 week. Normal space travel is accomplished through relatively efficient and powerful gravitic drives. Limited communication. There is no faster-than-light information transfer, meaning no sensible subspace radio or hyperwave. Communication is limited to the speed of travel. Decisions are made on the local level, rather than by a remote authority. No prime directive. Planets fight out internal wars, and capitalism is the major driving force of civilization. Sociological. Interstellar society is socially stratified is a primary character attribute. Affairs are often managed by independent nobility, who make use of classic titles such as Baron, Duke and Archduke. The typical game shows how being a traveller crosses classes and breaks stratification. Materialist. Rewards are material, rather than experience points, leveling up, and so on. Also, Newtonian physics tends to be followed. Diversity within limits, career options, ship design, subsector design, and decisions made during character generation limit and frame reality. The definitions create a diverse space within limits. Mortal people remain people and continue to show courage, wisdom, honesty, and justice, along with cowardice, deceit, and criminal behavior. People age and eventually die. Many Traveller rules make death during character generation a possibility. Currently active, though nearly all older versions of Traveller are available in PDF format. Traveller 5 and Mongoose. Traveller 2nd ed. are the two current rule sets. Both rely on 6-sided dice exclusively, and both draw from the original Traveller rules. The Traveller 5 core rules contains pulls rules mechanics from Traveller Adventures and toolbox material from supplements. It has a clean but retro black and white production style. Mongoose. Traveller 2nd ed. Now in its 2nd edition, Mongoose Traveller has a modern, full-color production style while resembling the original Traveller rules in scope. Sans Traveller's animal creation and starship design rules. Additional supplements will flesh out rules further, including a revision to High Guard to handle all starship design. Game description. Characters. Traveller introduced the life path-style character generation system to role-playing games. Traveller characters get the skills and experience in a mini-game, where the player makes career choices that determine the character's life up to the point right before adventuring begins. A character can be human, robot, alien, or of a genetically engineered species. A character can be civilian, military, or noble, a young cadet or a tried-and-true veteran, each with strengths and weaknesses. Traveller also became infamous in that a character could die during the character creation process before the process was finished. Characters are described by 6 primary characteristics: strength, dexterity, endurance, intelligence, education, and social standing. These characteristics are typically generated with a roll of 2 6-sided two-sided dice. Other general characteristics also exist, such as psionics and sanity. Some variant characteristics also exist, such as charisma and caste, which replace a primary characteristic to add nuance to alien characters. Psionics, extrasensory perception, telekinesis, telepathy, and other magical skills are organized and standardized into psionics. The rare characters can be psionic. Task systems. Each rule system has its own task mechanic for resolving character actions. Some systems use 2 or 3 6-sided dice, while others use multiple 6-sided dice, or a 20-sided die. Target numbers are typically determined by the referee, who takes into account task difficulty, skill level, and a characteristic. Situation and equipment used can provide a bonus or penalty to a roll. Depending on the task, whose success may require rolling above or below the target number. Equipment in Traveller typically emphasizes wilderness exploration, hazardous environments, and combat. As a result, equipment lists are heavy on vehicles, sensor equipment, communicators, rations, personal armor, and weapons. Low technology. Since primitive worlds exist near technological worlds, primitive weapons are also typically included, such as swords, shields, pikes, bows, and so on. High technology. And since high technology is available, cybernetic implants and non-sentient robots typically also show up in equipment lists, as well as artifacts from ancient vanished technological civilizations. Hard sci-fi flavor. While there are energy weapons in Traveller, there is also a strong presence of slug-thrower weapons such as rifles and pistols. The prevailing theory is that the most efficient way to stop someone is with kinetic energy. Starships. Traveller's rules for starship design and combat are like games unto themselves, with a complex balance of ship components fitting within certain hull volumes, technology levels, and modifiers based upon characters' skills. It is complex enough to be able to generically represent most starships used in role-playing games, and flexible enough to support custom add-ons to the system. Computer programs have been created to model and predict starship combat using Traveller rules. The most famous case involved Douglas Lennart applying his heuristic learning program to the scenario in the Traveller Adventure Trillion Credit Squadron, which contained rules for resolving very large space battles statistically. Eurisco discovered exploitable features of the starship design system that allowed it to build unusual fleets that won the 1981 and 1982 TCS National Championships. Worlds represent a wide spectrum of conditions, from barren planetoid moons to large water worlds, from uncolonized territory to planets with tens of billions of people. Most worlds tend to be only modestly colonized, though some worlds may be dangerously overcrowded. The world generation system in Traveller is geared to produce a highly random mix of worlds. Extensions take star system generation into account, and modify the process depending on the fecundity and history of the targeted area of space. Similar to the use of the UPP for characters, worlds are represented by an alphanumeric universal world profile that encodes key physical, social, and economic properties of the world. Adventures in Traveller tend to come from a few key themes. Setting. The original Traveller rule booklets were promoted as rules for running general science fiction role-playing games. Supplements soon followed with a default setting. This is known as the official Traveller universe Uncharted Space. The O2 is also known by the primary political entity in the setting, the Third Imperium. The Third Imperium is the largest and human-dominated interstellar empire in Uncharted Space. It is a feudalistic union of worlds. Local nobility operate largely free from oversight, restricted by convention and feudal obligations. Humans. There are various descendants of humanity, who are collectively called humanity. Humanity, Solomani Valani Jodani, cosmopolitan. Despite the thematic dominance of the human race, with most adventures taking place in human space, the Traveller universe is cosmopolitan, and is divided into a handful of major races and an unbounded number of minor races. These technological species are known as savants in Traveller jargon, a term borrowed from earlier science fiction material. Major races, often people that supposedly developed jump technology independently. The standard list of major races includes 6 races. 1. Aslan, the honor-bound felinoid Aslan. 2. Droin, the winged reptilioid Droin. 3. Hivers, the 6-fold symmetric manipulative Hivers. 4. Kekri, the centaur-like militant vegetarian Kekri. 5. Varg, the uplifted wolf hybrid Varg. 6. Humanity. Minor races, savants which have not independently developed the jump drive. Most have little or no significant background material. An early publication from Game Designers Workshop noted that the minor races, of which there are hundreds within the area of known space, will be largely left up to individual referees. GDW's quarterly publication, the Journal of the Traveller's Aid Society, sketched out about one race per quarter, starting with Aslan in issue 7, with no signs of letting up. Taken together with aliens casually mentioned or introduced in separate scenarios or adventures, often arbitrarily, there is therefore no indication that the number of minor races is limited in any sense. Ancients. The Ancients were a major race in the distant past. The ruins dot planets throughout charted space, and their artifacts are more technically advanced than those of any existing civilization. For unknown reasons, they transplanted humans from Earth to dozens of worlds, uplifted Terran wolves to create the Varged, and undertook many mega-scale engineering projects before destroying the civilization in a catastrophic war. Publishing history. Publishing format. The original Traveller game books were distinctive half-size black pamphlets produced by Game Designers Workshop. The main rules were detailed in 3 such booklets, sold as a box set, while the same format was used for early support material, such as the adventures, supplements and further books. Later supplements and updated versions of the main game system introduced full-sized booklets, complete rewrites of the game system and significant changes to the Third Imperium. Editions. Traveller. The original version was designed and published by GDW in 1977. This edition is also sometimes called, retroactively, Classic Traveller. The core rules originally came as 3 distinctive little black books in a box set. Supplemental booklets included Advanced Character Generation, Capital Ship Design, Robots, and more. 8 boxed wargames were released as tie-in products. Mega Traveller, a major overhaul published by GDW in 1987, but designed by Digest Group Publications. The game system used revised rules developed in DGP's Traveller's Digest periodical. The game was set during the Rebellion era, which shattered the Imperium. Supplements and magazines produced during this era detailed the progression of the rebellion from the initial assassination of the Emperor in 1116, to the collapse of large-scale interstellar trade in roughly 1124. Traveller, the New Era, published in 1993. This was the final edition published by GDW, set in the former territory of the Third Imperium after interstellar government and society society had largely collapsed. TNE introduced the AI virus, a silicon chip life form that infected and took over computers. The game mechanics used GDW's house system, derived from Twilight 2000 Second Ed. The game used a more realism-centered approach to science fiction, doing away with reactionless thrusters, shortening laser ranges to a reasonable distance, etc. T4, Mark Miller's Traveller, published by Imperium Games in 1996. T4 is set in the early days of the Third Imperium, with the small, newly formed empire surrounded by regressed barbaric worlds. The mechanics and text resemble a mix of Traveller and the New Era. GURPS Traveller. The game uses the third edition of the GURPS system and takes place in an alternate timeline in which no rebellion occurred and the AI virus was never released. Steve Jackson Games produced numerous supplements for the line, including details for all of the major races, many of the minor races, Interstellar Trade, Expanded World Generation, the military forces of the Third Imperium, and Starships, published by QuickLink Interactive in 2002. This version uses the D20 system as its base and is set at the time of the Soleimani Rim War around Imperial year 990, about a century before the era depicted in the original game. The preferred setting is the Gateway Domain region of the Imperium. GURPS Traveller. Interstellar Wars. In 2006, Steve Jackson Games released Interstellar Wars for the recently released 4th edition of GURPS. The timeline was rolled back to 2170, which is earlier than the usual Traveller setting, to the early days of Earth's presence in space at the time when Earth first started to send out interstellar ships, to include the period just after the Third Interstellar War between the Terran Confederation and the gigantic Zero-Circa Empire. Traveller Hero, a port of the Traveller setting to the Hero system, produced under license by Comstar Games in 2006. Mongoose Traveller. Mongoose Publishing published this version both in a traditional format and as an open gaming SRD around which other games may be built. It is adapted from Traveller, with updated careers and technology. It is referred to as MGT or MGT to differentiate it from Mount or Mega Traveller. The core rulebook was released in April 2008, with a regular series of supplements following. In 2013, Far Future Games published a new set of rules by reworking and integrating concepts from earlier rule sets. Mongoose Traveller 2nd Edition. Mongoose Publishing released an updated 2nd edition in 2016 with 60 more pages, a modern look, and lots of color illustrations. Traveller in other media. Software GDW licensee Paragon produced 2 video games based on the Traveller universe. Mega Traveller 1, The Jodani Conspiracy for Amiga, Atari ST and MS-DOS operating environments, and ... Mega Traveller 2, Quest for the Ancients for Amiga and MS-DOS. Novels. Several novels have been specifically set in the various Traveller universes. In addition, Jefferson Swycaffe has written several novels set in the Concordat fictional universe he originally developed for his Traveller campaign. Gregory P. Lee's The Laughing Lip series acknowledges the influence of Traveller in the development of the 3 novels published to date. Mr. Lee also wrote the Gamma Lords supplement, Lee's Guide to Interstellar Adventure, in the early 1980s. There are 2 different backwards mask books in the Death of Wisdom trilogy. The manuscript by the original author was lost until shortly after the replacement manuscript was published. The original was then published for those who wanted it, and Carson serves as an alternate end to the trilogy. Periodicals. Gaming magazine White Dwarf ran a comic strip called The Travelers by Mark Harrison from 1983 to 1986. The strip spoofed Traveller and other space opera settings. Television. In May 2014, game designer and film producer Ken Whitman announced that his company, D20 Entertainment, had procured a license from Mark Miller to produce a Traveller television pilot. The pilot is to be titled Spinward Traveller and will follow the adventures of John Spinward, who is pressed into service aboard a pirate ship. On June 1, 2014, Whitman launched a Kickstarter campaign for the film. The campaign is seeking $30,000 to produce a 22-minute pilot, but has stretch goals for up to a 96-minute film. The campaign received over $5,000 in its first day. Related systems. 2300 AD. 2300 AD is a hard science fiction alternative to the looser space opera of Traveller, presented as a future extrapolation of the speculative World War III of GDW's popular military role-playing game Twilight 2000, in which the various nations of Earth were only just beginning to explore and colonize the 50-light-year sphere of surrounding space. Originally titled Traveller 2300, the second edition of the game was renamed 2300 AD and introduced some cyberpunk rules and adventures.